Hello art friends! Today we're going to be making water lilies inspired by the art of Claude Monet. So let's find out which art supplies you need and let's get started. These are the supplies that you need to create your Monet water lilies. You need 2 pieces of white paper. We need white paper so that we can create the background, which is the water, as well as the lily pads and the flowers. You're going to need paint, and this is to do the background. So you want to choose colors that will be like watercolors. So you can use a purple, blue, like seafoam green, white, any colors that you have that remind you of water will be perfect for this project. You need a plastic bag or a piece of bubble wrap. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a plastic bag and crumble it up, or if you have bubble wrap, same thing, we're gonna crumble it up, and that's what we're gonna dip into the paint to create our textured background to look like Monet's water lilies. You need a pencil, of course, to do sketching, scissors, glue, and the last thing that you need are oil pastels or crayons. I'm using oil pastels on mine, but if you don't have oil pastels, crayons will work as well. So gather up your art materials and let's get started. So who was Claude Monet? Claude Monet was an Impressionist artist who was born in France in 1840. Impressionist artists used everyday life as inspiration, and they painted the world around them. Impressionist artists like Claude Monet established a new way of painting outdoors. With his easel and his paint, Claude Monet would go outside and paint his beloved pond and garden. Impressionism was a revolutionary art movement as it opened the door to abstract painting and marked the beginning of modern art. Claude Monet loved to paint his garden and pond at his home in France. His water lilies are a series of paintings that he painted many times. Claude Monet filled huge canvases with quick dabs of paint as he tried to capture the effects of the sunlight on the pond water. Monet painted rapidly with quick brushstrokes, capturing the moment of color before the sunlight would change the scene. His loose dab painting style creates a very dreamy-like atmosphere, full of glowing color, reflections, and floating lilies. And today, Claude Monet is known as one of the world's greatest artists. And you're going to paint just like Claude Monet today. So now we're ready to paint the background. Make sure that you have a placemat to cover the table that you're working on because we are going to paint the entire paper. We don't want to get any paint on the surface that you're painting on. If you don't have this style paint for the background, here are 2 other options that you can use. You can use crayons and just use a variety of different colors like blues, purples, even a little bit of green, and you can cover the whole entire area and that would be used for your background. Or if you have watercolor paint, you can even use watercolor paint. Same thing, use a different variety of watercolors and paint the entire background. But these are just 2 options. If you don't have this paint, you can still create a beautiful water lily pond using different art materials. So now we're ready to paint the background. We want to try to capture the same light and quick movement as Claude Monet did in his water lily painting, and so that we can create a background that looks like this. So get your paint and either get your plastic bag or your piece of bubble wrap, and we're going to get started. Claude Monet was an Impressionist painter and he loved to paint outdoors, especially his beautiful garden and lily pond at his house in France. And he would paint very quickly with quick dabs of paint to capture the light of the scene before the colors would change. And that's what we're going to do for our background. So just take your plastic bag or bubble wrap and crumble it up. Choose whatever color you want to get started. I'm going to choose the blue. And usually I dip in, but I take a little bit of the extra off on the side. And just dab. So a little bit of paint goes a long way. Dip into a little bit of this purple color. You can change directions as you're dabbing. Remember, get to the sides of the paper. Try a little seafoam green. Water Lilies is not the name of a single painting that Claude Monet created. In fact, it's rather a series of paintings that he painted. He painted over 250 water lily paintings. Quite impressive. Take a little bit of the white. And the white's gonna add a little bit of value, make some of these colors a little bit lighter. And I'm gonna go back to the blue. So keep painting your entire background using your paint and your plastic bag or your piece of bubble wrap. I'm going to finish mine, and then we're going to move on to the next part. So the next part, after we've painted the background, is sketching our lily pads. So you're going to make sure that you just put your painting off to the side, let it dry, and we can complete the sketching while that is drying. So you're going to grab your pencil, and we're just going to make these very simple shapes for our lily pads. Now, depending on how big your background is, will determine how many lily pads you want to include on your water. I'm going to create 2, so I'll show you how to do that. So we're basically drawing this oval shape, and it has a notch. So you're going to take your pencil, just come around, bring this down a little bit, and then we're just going to go in, so it's like the top of a triangle, come back out, and just connect that there. And then I'm going to make another one over here. And once I cut these out, color them in and cut them out, I can change the direction of how I want to position them on my pond. So the next part is creating the lily flower. I've already created one here, and I'm going to show you how to make it. It depends on how many lily pads that you have. That will determine how many flowers that you need to create. So you're going to take your pencil, and if you have room on that same paper like I do, you can use that paper, or if you need to get another one, you can. And you're going to take your pencil, and you're going to make a little dot. That's going to be our little guide point, so that every time we make a petal, we come right back to that point. A lily flower has 6 petals, and that's what we're going to create for ours. So starting at that guide point, you're going to take your pencil and you're going to go out, curve out, go to the top to a point, and now when you come back down, you're going to curve out the other way and come back in. So that's petal number 1. Okay, petal number 2, same thing, curve out to a point, come back in, curve the other way. For the third petal, I'm going to have it kind of tucked underneath. So I'm going to start over here, and I'm going to go out to a point, and I'm going to bring that back in and go to the point. Okay, fourth petal, same thing. I'm going to start over here in the middle. I'm going to come out, go to a point, and curve it back in. Okay, the next one, I'm going to start over here, go to the point, curve that out, and go back in. And then the last one, our 6th petal, is going to get put into this little spot right here. To the point, and curve back in. Now you have your lily flowers and your lily pads. Now we're ready to add color to our lily pads. Using oil pastels is going to give us the same quality and texture that Monet had in his paintings using oil paint, and they can be blended easily. But if you don't have oil pastels, you can use crayons, and it's still going to come out looking great. So using oil pastels are like crayons, but the goal is to layer the colors and have them look really rich and intense. So what I did was I chose 3 different greens, and I'm just going to start with this one. And I'm just going to set up my guidelines so I know where I have to color in. Again, we don't have to really worry about going outside of this line because these are going to get cut out at the end. So when you start off, they are just like crayons. But again, the goal is to develop those layers of color to give it that really rich and intense look like oil painting. So now I'm going to go in, I'm going to choose this yellow-green color. And you can see how cool it is when you go over the top. And we want to cover those white spots and really try to develop that intense color. Now I'm going to use this one. This is a little bit of a darker green, and just add a little darker value on the outside edges. And even around the shape of the lily pad. Oil pastels are fun to use. It's another great art material to experiment with. And for this project, having it try to look like oil painting, the oil pastels give us that nice option for it. So I'm going to continue coloring mine all the way in. So you do the same, color both of your lily pads, and then we'll move on to the flowers. So now we're ready to color your flowers. You can use any colors that you wish, but use a combination of colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. So for instance, red, magenta, and purple, or yellow, yellow, orange, and orange. You don't want to use colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel because they're going to produce a color that may not be appealing for your flower. We're trying to create very value and rich colors for our flowers, so just think about those colors that are next to each other when you start coloring. Also, you may want to keep a paper towel or a napkin off to the side. This is helpful to clean the tops of your oil pastel when they pick up other colors. Just put it in the paper towel and twist, and it'll make it like brand new. And you also may want to use that paper towel to take oil pastel little flakes that are on there, and you can just tap those down or very carefully scoop them onto the paper towel. You don't want to rub them because it will smear your artwork, and you also don't want to blow them because if they get on your table or your furniture, they will stain. So now we're ready to get started with coloring. So I'm going to use these colors for my flower, sort of like the pinks and oranges and a little bit of white for blending. Remember, if you don't have oil pastels, you can use crayons and you will still be able to achieve those same types of colors. So again, just like we did with our lily pad, just go in. If you want, you can outline the shape first with the one color. I'm just going to go in with this color. And then I'm going to take a little bit of this darker pink. And again, try to cover up those white spots. And then I'm going to take the darker red. I'm going to do that in the center there. I'm just going to make it a little bit darker, again, to show that value. Don't worry if you go outside the line on the shape of your flower because it is going to get cut out at the end. Take your time, think about blending those colors. It'll give our flower a very realistic look. I love how intense some of these colors are. Really makes the flower stand out. So I'm going to take my time and finish up coloring in my flower, and then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, Okay, so now that our coloring is finished, it's time to cut out both our lily pads and the flowers. So grab your scissors and you are going to cut right on the line of the sketch. Just take your time cutting out. Remember, just keep turning the paper, especially when you have curved areas that you're cutting. And also, any little bit of scrap paper that you have left over, keep a little bit, because I'm going to show you an option at the end that you can add to your flower. So I have my lily pads, and now I'm going to finish cutting out this flower. Again, just take your time, carefully cut around. Make sure you cut right where the color is. We don't want to have any white on the edges. And just so you know, oil pastel is fun, but it is messy. If you have a baby wipe, it's probably one of the best things to clean up your hands, and also on the scissors too, because you can see that the oil pastel gets on there. So just use a baby wipe and just clean those off very carefully, and also use it on your hands. So now that our flowers are cut out and our lily pads, I'm going to show you how to glue them on to your background. Okay, so now we're ready to glue. So you determine how you want your lily pads to be floating on the pond. You can have them going in the same direction like that, or if you want to change them, it's entirely up to you. So take your glue and you're going to apply it to the back of your lily pad. The liquid glue works really well for this, but if you don't have it, a glue stick will work. You'll just have to really press it down to have it stick on. So I'm going to put this one down here. What I teach my students is to sometimes hold it. You can count to 10 just so that that piece really sticks onto the paper. Okay, now for the flower, we're going to do something fun. We're actually going to bend the petals a little bit so it gives it that 3D illusion like this one. So you just kind of curl the ends of the petal, just kind of bend them down. And then what you're going to do is put a little bit of glue on the back. You don't need a lot, just goes in the center. And place it right onto your lily pad. Again, hold it probably for at least 10 seconds. And while I'm doing that, I'm gonna curve these up a little bit more. And there are your lily pads and flowers floating on the pond. So a fun option is adding the little middle part to our flower, the pistil. And what we're going to do is use that leftover scrap paper from when we cut out our flower and the lily pad and just decorate it. So you can use crayons or oil pastels. And when you choose the color that you want for it, you're going to color both sides, and you'll see why. So I'm just using a little bit of this orange, blend it with some yellow. And then I'm going to also do some on the back. Just so we get a little color on there. Okay, now you're going to take your scissors and basically just cut out a long rectangle piece. Again, make sure the front and back are covered. And then you're just going to go down with very thin cuts, not all the way to the end, because we're going to bend that little part. And then this part down at the bottom that we left gets bent back. And that's where we add glue to add to the center. So I might want to just trim these a little bit. They're a little long. Okay, so now I'm going to take my glue. I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the bottom. And I'm going to press it right in the center of my flower. And as you press it, you're kind of twisting these in different directions. We don't want them going in the same direction. Gives a little bit more realistic feel. And there's that fun little center part that you can add using your scrap paper. So finish doing that for both flowers, and then I will check back with you. These water lilies look magnificent. Even Claude Monet would be proud. I hope you enjoyed creating your water lilies today and learning about Impressionist artist Claude Monet. Until next time, keep smiling, keep dreaming, and keep creating.